Hello, and welcome to Mastering Cloud Migration, 5 key considerations for seamless workload migration in hybrid cloud environments. Today's webinar is sponsored by Gigamon, Presidio, and AWS, and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this discussion panel. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have 3 housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. A Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, and slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to a link to get started with Gigamon. You can also find some Actual Tech Media resources in there, so I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant here just in time for Black Friday shopping. So, of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. All right. With all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's timely discussion. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have David Winter, who's Principal Migration and Modernization Advisor for Amazon Web Services. We have Srinivas Chakravarti, who's Vice President for Cloud Ecosystem at Gigamon. And we've got Mark Grigoletto, who's Director of Cloud Marketplace at Presidio. So let's turn things over to Mark, who will be acting as a moderator for the discussion.
All right. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out to join this presentation. Today, we're going to talk about some cloud initiatives, typically mastering migrations. We're going to go over some considerations that we'll cover in more detail about moving things to a hybrid environment. With me today, I've got David Winter, Principal Migration Modernization Advisor from AWS, Srinivas Chakravarti, VP of Cloud Ecosystems, and I am Mark Rigoletto. I am the Cloud Marketplace Director at Presidio. So again, I'm going to do some introductions here. David, if you don't mind giving yourself a quick intro, and then Srinivas, yourself, and then we can jump into the topics here.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Again, I'm David Winter. I'm a Principal Migration and Modernization Advisor with AWS. What that means is that I help customers, I help partners, I help other people at Amazon talk to customers thinking about why are migration and modernization pathways to AWS something that can or will help customers achieve their business objectives. So I find myself listening to what customers are trying to accomplish, maybe in the short term or the long term, maybe very strategically or very tactically, asking a lot of questions, trying to figure out how things are happening, when things are happening, who's doing what work. And then my value to the customer is to turn around and combine my knowledge of teams, tools, and programs inside AWS and outside AWS. And in some cases, my value is maybe overshadowed by just having seen a lot of migrations, things that have worked for customers and things that haven't worked for customers at various stages, and bringing those experiences to bear to help the customer that's in front of me.
Awesome, David.
Thanks, David.
I'll go next.
Srinivas. Oops. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Hey, no worries. Thanks, David. That's an awesome intro. And thanks, Mark. My name is Srinivas Chakravarti. I'm the VP of Technology Partner Alliances and Cloud Ecosystem here at Gigamon. I've been with Gigamon for a little over 2 years, and the key charter for my team here at Gigamon is to drive partnerships with a lot of intent behind that. We all know customers are migrating their workloads to cloud, and the goal for Gigamon is to help these customers migrate these workloads to cloud with confidence. So that means I work with CSPs such as AWS. I work with the different observability and SIM vendors, be it Dynatrace, New Relic, Sumo Logic, Elastic, or Datadog. We have a whole range of observability and SIM vendors that we have tight integrations with. And we also work with a lot of NDR, network detection response vendors, API security vendors. So all these partners that are actually helping customers migrate their workloads to cloud, we work with them in an agnostic manner and provide network related insights that will further help the customers migrate workloads with confidence. And that's kind of my charter here, to build these partnerships across our ecosystem of partners, work backwards from customers in terms of understanding their requirements and building joint solutions with our partners to delight our customers.
Perfect. Thank you both for that introduction. If we can move to the next slide and we'll get into the topic. So we're going to do a little discussion. We did the introductions, and we're going to have some questions and answers following the discussion. Again, moderator will take the questions and we'll answer them as they go. But what we're going to talk about, 5 things that you guys need as customers to make sure there's a smooth transition from your on-prem to AWS. We're going to touch upon security and compliance, what it means. We're going to talk about data migration strategies, how to come up with them. Performance monitoring is key to make sure you get the biggest bang for the buck. Cost optimization is optimal. That's something that Presidio can help, as well as AWS and Gigamon. And then obviously you want to prepare for the future and future-proof your environment. So we'll help you get to that point. Next slide. So let's talk about security and compliance. Security and compliance is a big topic, a broad topic. So I guess, David, if you want to start kicking this part of the session off as what security compliance means to AWS, how you can, with Gigamon and Presidio's help, address these issues, and obviously, Srinivas, jump in when you feel appropriate.
Absolutely.
Sure. No, thanks. I talk to a lot of customers on a regular basis, and the reasons that each customer and sometimes different folks, teams inside those customers have a desire to migrate to AWS varies. Varies from cost, it varies from resilience, it varies from scalability, but inevitably security, and in some cases, depending on the customer, compliance comes into the conversation. Most notably, it comes in the context of, can I do, as a customer, can I do the same level of security in AWS as I've been accustomed to on premises, or is kind of the standard for my industry or for the service that I'm providing? And generally, the answer is yes. Now, I've been with Amazon since 2013. So, I've got to watch our capabilities in security and compliance grow over the last 10 years. Today, I feel safe in every security and compliance conversation telling a customer, yes, you can make your workloads secure at rest, secure in transit, at whatever level of security your industry, your customers require, and live up to whatever industry compliance that you need. And more than likely, we already have a predetermined pattern, solution, or set of partners that help you with that. It might look and feel different, right? How you do security today, how you've done security today, the way you will execute that, the tools you choose, how you configure them, how you monitor them may be different. But my job is to, again, look past the effort level of that change, why things are going to be different, and showcase the value on the other side. For example, to put very simply, Amazon has firewalls, right? We call them security groups. right? They're built into nearly everything that we have, and they're very configurable, right? Ports are open, ports are closed, like most firewalls. And it's very different for folks to think about firewalls as an inherent component of the configuration versus maybe more of an edge device that you have on premises. And the folks on customer environments that would manage firewall security, that onus being shifted to maybe the developer that's developing the application is a bit different. But once we overcome that mental kind of shift in how customers are doing security compliance, and they realize that we're actually empowering them with, capability to do what they need, more than likely a set of tools and capabilities that exceeds the collection of tools and capabilities they have today, kind of opening up a broader set of capabilities and security. Customers tend to get very excited and start leaning in, willingness for the change. My job also is to look at the business case of how much does it cost for you to transition security and compliance? Where does it provide additional value in the long term? Having come from a world of kind of network monitoring, which I know Srinivas is very familiar with, I get to geek out on this with customers, especially about when we're thinking about security in the network world. So, I think I get to have these great conversations with customers every day. Srinivas, I'm sure you get to have great conversations with customers about security compliance every day and what Gigamon brings. And I'd love to hear that as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And true to your spirit, basically, I know that security is P0 at AWS, and it is quite so at Gigamon as well. And just to kind of describe the nature of the customers that we typically deal with, these are large enterprise customers, and we have in excess of 4,000 of those. And pretty much like every enterprise customer, the customers that we have are actively evaluating or engaging in the digital transformation journey. They want to migrate their workloads to cloud. And when they do migrate these workloads to cloud, they don't do it in one fell swoop. In fact, there could be some instances where applications may not be able to leave the data center. This could be latency sensitive applications or applications that are bound by data sovereignty and data residency requirements. But then applications that can move to cloud, customers are actually willing to do that. And they have moved a bunch of them already, right? What happens as a result of the different motions, different workloads, and the nature of the workloads is there is applications that are in cloud, in AWS, that are interacting with applications that are on-prem and in the hybrid environment. And as you know, there is definitely a complex maze of traffic that goes across all three environments. The other thing that customers do realize when they migrate the workloads to cloud is obviously cloud is a shared responsibility model. Anything hypervisor and below, AWS takes care of them. Anything above the hypervisor is customer's responsibility. So when you put these two together, where the applications are migrating to cloud, but they're also interacting with the applications and workloads on-prem and in hybrid environment, and the shared responsibility model, customers do take their security roles very, very seriously. These days, that the CISOs have a very tough job being scrutinized for everything they're putting together, ensuring that the perimeter is protected, which was much easier when it was a data center where they had all those shiny metal objects that they can hug and put in there within their own data centers, right? They had a well-defined perimeter. But as they're moving to cloud, they also want to get the same consistent feel in terms of experience, in terms of the assurance that it's all protected, right? And that's where you can't blame a CISO if a CISO is acting under the impression that the breach has already happened, which is the right thing to do also. Typically, north-south is something that our customers have paid a lot of attention to, but east-west is also equally critical from security point of view. And that's where customers have approached us in terms of getting that east-west level visibility. We have to assume, and as most CISOs do, that the hacker has already breached the IT environment and is kind of operating within the east-west territory. Sometimes the security tools may or may not be able to catch them. When you have situations like that, one of the few things that the hacker typically ends up doing when they breach the IT environment is they turn off the log footprint. And logs are very useful. The observability SIM vendors, they typically rely on logs. Application developers, they rely on logs as customers are migrating workloads from on-prem to a hybrid or to cloud environment. And observability and SIM tools using those logs give a pre, post, and during migration picture. And logs help in terms of identifying the CPU memory metrics, and they're very awesome. But the hackers actually have figured out, and they're getting smarter by the day, right? They can actually go and breach the IT environment. The first thing they do is turn off the log footprint. They sometimes record the logs and replay the logs and give the false sense of security to the security player, saying, hey, look, everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine. But in fact, they're actually getting into action, going about doing what they do the best, the hackers, right? So in such situations, when the log footprint is turned off, that's where packets come to rescue. Packets are always on. They cannot be manipulated. And they add that extra layer of defense and security to the solutions that the observability and SIM vendors already provide. In terms of logs, they are already contributing to the security side of the story, CPU, memory metrics. We add with this network telemetry side of the equation an extra layer of security by providing the packet side of the equation. So if there is any data exfiltration that's happening, if there is any expired TLS certificates, if there is any port spoofing that's happening, basically we extract all that information and share it with the tooling vendors and give that coverage when situations like these happen. One other thing that the hackers typically do is we know that all the traffic that's going between different machines, be it virtual machines or containers, it's all encrypted. And encryption is a very good thing. It protects the confidentiality of the customer data. What the nefarious actors do is they actually take advantage of the encryption and they actually incorporate their attacks in a very encrypted manner. And security tools half the time won't be able to detect some of these nefarious activities because they are encrypted. So what Gigamon has recently done in the recent launch is we've introduced this technology called precryption technology. Obviously, you can understand the relationship to decryption, where we actually use a new eBPF-based technology. It's actually eBPF technology has been around for a long time. We use this technology to capture the traffic before it's encrypted or after it's decrypted. So we have this clear text. And we take that traffic and send it to the tooling vendors in a very secure tunnel manner and provide this visibility to all the attacks that might be happening in the encrypted manner by basically providing clear text visibility to the tooling vendors, and they would be able to act on it and derive the threat insights based on that, right? So these are some of the things that we are doing for our customers, keeping in mind that security is primary for our customers. And that's kind of how we are going about protecting our customers. From compliance point of view as well, we have a deep integration with AWS. For instance, we are a launch partner with Amazon Security Lake that they've recently launched. Customers can actually take all the network telemetry data, put it in the Amazon Security Lake, and store it there, and it will extract that and send it to their tooling vendors, be it for audit reasons or compliance or regulatory reasons, right? So we have all these sorts of integrations with AWS that's kind of further helping customers fulfill the requirements from security and compliance point of view. We also have what we call M2131 compliance requirements that we actually create in a form of a starter pack template for federal customers to actually go and look at what are the key networking attributes that will help them fulfill some of this FedRAMP related constraints, right? So from security and compliance point of view, these are some of the things we are doing to make sure our customers are protected.
Great. You guys hit the nail on the head there. I think anybody that has any questions, obviously put them in the chat and we'll take it from there. But David, Srinivas, great topic. Let's move on to migration strategies and why they're important. Presidio does quite a few migrations with AWS. So David, if you want to take the lead on this one, and then we can fill in the blanks as we go with Srinivas as well.
Perfect, Mark. Thanks. And thanks, Presidio, migration competent partner. migration competencies part of the migration acceleration program that was built in AWS in 2016. I was on the founding team writing the original kind of internal Amazonian 6-pager on that program. Probably one of our most successful, if not the most successful program inside of AWS since inception. I talk to customers again about migrations all day, every day, and it always starts with, why are we migrating? What do you want to accomplish? Right? And that seeds the conversation that leads to the strategy for how we're migrating. Customers that want to migrate out of data centers, maybe because kind of external forces where the data centers are closing, or where they believe that there's a kind of short-term financial gain. Pretty common situation. Merger and acquisition activity, also a pretty common situation for kind of urgent timelined migrations. A lot of pressure, to not spend money on buying new hardware, maintaining that purchased hardware, bringing along with that hardware all the support contracts. These are kind of pretty common known migration motivators, which lead to strategies, right? A motivator like that might say, hey, listen, I might suggest some sort of a lift and shift migration strategy. You need to move quickly. You're concerned more with a short-term strategy to save money or to meet a deadline or legal obligation. Then we've got migration strategies that might be with leveraging our application migration service that picks up your Windows and Linux servers and very quickly moves them into EC2, right? In some cases, moves them into RDS for your databases and such. So by and large, you're not really transforming or modernizing, but you are moving very quickly. It's a very known pattern. It's a very well-worn pattern, and it's a very affordable and quick pattern. On the other side of that, maybe the complete other end of the spectrum, I've had conversations with customers where I said, hey, listen, why are we migrating? And the customer said, well, we need better analytics capabilities. And instead of building these analytic capabilities, we're going to start using an Amazon service, call it Redshift. And we need to move a bunch of data into AWS so we can use Redshift. Well, great. What do you need all these new analytic capabilities for? And they go, oh, well, we're building a mobile application for our bank. And we want that mobile application to have better analytic capabilities to compete with other banks. Cool. Why are you behind? Well, our demographic is, X, Y, and Z, and we really want to tap into demographic A, B, and C, and we think it'll grow our business by, 150%. I'm like, okay, there we go. We found it. You're really trying to grow your business into a different demographic that you haven't traditionally serviced. In order to attract that demographic, you need to have certain analytic capabilities that you haven't yet been able to provide. And instead of building them yourself, you're going to shortcut that by leveraging analytic capabilities that are already in AWS. And in order to use that, you're a bank that has 50 years, 100 years of financial data. You're going to bring all that amazing data into AWS so that you can analyze it. Perfect. Now I understand what your objective is. Now I understand what we're trying to accomplish. Now I can turn around and suggest, how are we going to move this data? Where are we going to move this data to? What sources, what tools, what partners might be very helpful to bring in? And as a function of that, we might not be bringing along the traditional databases that this data is stored in. We might start thinking about getting out of maybe licensed database technologies and into maybe more native AWS technologies. We might start thinking about the code that was run on this data on-premise through maybe different third-party applications, and think about maybe using something like more serverless code instead of an army of operating system-based instances to run analytics on this. So now we're starting to lean towards much more of a modernization of their data analytics capability in AWS. It's a totally different migration than lift and shift. It's a different set of partners. It's a different set of tools. It's a wildly different business case. And so my job is to help figure all those things out so that I can help pick the right migration strategy. Now, more often than not, it's not one end of the spectrum or the other. More often than not, it's across the entire spectrum, right? There are things in a customer's environment that help them achieve their objective that can be modernized and should be modernized. And I'm always talking to customers about those two things. Let's find things that can be, but then let's caveat that with should they be. And if they shouldn't be modernized, maybe they're going to be sunset soon, maybe they can't be modernized, then let's identify what lower order migration patterns will work for that. And still always focus it back to that customer's business objective. There are a lot of fun things out there to modernize. There's a lot of fun things out there to move into AWS. But I want to make sure customers are always linking it back to their business case. And I want to make sure that data migration strategies are not just linked back one time at the very beginning, but as a constant process throughout the migration, that we're asking ourselves, what's changed? What's changed in your business? What's changed in your industry? And what's changed in cloud? And do we need to pivot so that we can adhere to your business objectives, but take advantage of the most recent knowledge in migration strategies, business outcomes, and technology to give you the best outcome? So again, big spectrum of data migration strategies, and that could be literally from moving just data. I've got a lot of customers right now using this example. We're moving data into AWS just for analysis, but it's also about still moving operating systems, taking advantage of different AWS services, building in security, as we just mentioned, resiliency, scale, entering new markets, maybe in foreign areas. I know we're launching some new interesting sovereign markets in Europe right now. So I would encourage customers to always reach out to their Amazon team, to their partner, Mark, Presidio, and explain what they're trying to accomplish so that we can suggest which data strategy or migration strategy is going to be best for them. Now, Srinivas, you get to watch this unfold, right? You get to see how customers are using data and what they look like on premise. And as they're migrating, you also get to kind of observe what does it look like when they're halfway through the migration and help them with that forward-looking model. So what do you think about migration strategies?
Absolutely. And the points that you raised there, David, are very critical. The objectives for the customers could be different depending upon whether they want to go to, let's say, something like an outpost or something like a local zone.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have all the applications that are latency sensitive or data residency related stuff. You have appropriate solutions to actually meet those requirements. Or it could be a lift and shift where in that case, it could easily go out to cloud, right? Or if they are thinking about doing something like running modernization on-prem, you have something like EKS Anywhere that you actually can give the customers to modernize and not have to leave their premise at the same time if they have some of these constraints, right? So you're right on with your point in terms of what their objectives are and what kind of workloads they are running. And to your question, yes, we do have our customers who are actually actively evaluating how exactly should they migrate their applications to cloud. Now, what are the key factors that are involved in this whole migration process? Well, they have a bunch of applications and workloads that they're running on-prem. They've got everything in place. They know exactly what the CPU constraints are, what the memory constraints are on-prem. And they know exactly what the firewall protection needs to be, which load balancer they want to use, what tooling ecosystem they want to use. And they've got all these personas right now, NetOps, SecOps, all of them interoperating with each other. Now, when an application is going to cloud, that's when there are few things that these personas want to accomplish. One is maintain a consistent experience. Now, it's sometimes difficult to have that level of consistency when you're migrating those workloads to cloud because obviously you got the DevOps folks who are leading the charter and they actually go and migrate. They got the keys to kingdom, right? They actually go migrate the workloads ahead of most of the other personas within the company. And they are leading the charter, to be honest, the DevOps folks. And they do come back with certain recommendations within the company that may or may not be right for the NetOps folks or the SecOps folks, right? So that's where what we've seen is there is some level of silo formation that happens within the companies, where the different personas sometimes are kind of pulling apart when they're actually trying to migrate those workloads. And David, I would be keen to hear your thoughts on how these different stakeholders are coming to the table and addressing those kind of issues, right? But uh, what we've seen is from the kind of personas that we interact with, which are predominantly on the SecOps side as well as the NetOps side, they want to make sure that the kind of consistent, they want to make sure the kind of tooling experience they have on-prem, it is consistent across all the three environments: on-prem, hybrid, and cloud environment. So what we've done to that extent here is if there is, let's say, a customer that's using a New Relic on-prem or a Dynatrace on-prem, we've worked on the corresponding integration in cloud. So the customers are already familiar using these kind of tooling ecosystems on-prem, and they will easily transition over to cloud using the same ecosystem of tools. What it also helps them do is it helps them sit down and understand the tool rationalization part. Do we need to have separate tools, one for on-prem, one for cloud? And there's a tool sprawl that's happening. Do we need to have this for different data centers? That's another thing that they're considering. Or do we need to have a tool that we have to deploy in a colo? Should that be in a hybrid environment? So they actually, when they're migrating these workloads to cloud, all these things become fair game, and they actually think about how to rationalize this tool. Should we have a version on-prem, and should we have another version of the same tool in cloud, or should we actually centralize all of them in cloud? What we've seen is customers are increasingly thinking about centralizing some of these tooling ecosystems in cloud. And the SaaS-based approach for all these tooling ecosystem vendors has further driven that process there. So we've seen customers use Gigamon's tap and aggregation to take the traffic from any nook and corner in the on-prem environment or in the hybrid environment, and send it over to our Gigamon product, the Cloud Suite version in AWS. And then let it aggregate in cloud and further get upstream sent over to the tooling ecosystem that's all consolidated and centralized in AWS. So those are some of the aspects that we've seen customers focus on.
Excellent. Thanks for addressing that for sure. Let's jump to the next topic, performance monitoring. Everybody is keenly interested in performance monitoring, what it means, how to set up metrics, what kind of tools to use, things of that sort. David, do you want to take the first crack at it, or Srinivas, your choice?
Oh, I'll go. I'm super excited. I before I came to AWS, I was with a performance monitoring company. And prior to that, Mark, as we talked about, I used to run managed services at Presidio back in 2012 or something like that. So I geek out on things like this. Back in my day, it was kind of like CPU disk memory, 5-minute intervals, SNMP, and that was kind of the whole world. We had only started, Srinivas, as you mentioned earlier about logging, we'd only started doing logging. Splunk was in like version 2 at the time. So what I've observed about performance monitoring and migration is that the further you lean towards modernization, which has value to, kind of long-term value to companies and their migration and their objectives, the further you get into a new performance monitoring operating model in your future, the further you're getting away from, I just have to focus on CPU, disk, and memory, and everything will be okay. Clearly, logging is a massively important thing right now. Application level monitoring, and now, kind of cloud level monitoring, right? Looking at what changes are going on in AWS. Who's making the changes? When are they making the changes? How does that have impact? But one of the interesting things that Srinivas, I'm sure, is going to talk about is monitoring of packets has always been important, right? Back TCP dump. Like I used to be able to troubleshoot any problem in the world with ping and TCP dump. And now that's changed as we get into the world of cloud. And that ability to monitor traffic flows and kind of magically suss out what's going on from those traffic flows is a little more nuanced in cloud because we're not giving people direct access to Cisco switches, right? Gone are the days of spanning a port on a switch and feeding it into a packet sniffer in order to figure out what's going on. And so now we have more elegant ways of observing that traffic in cloud. So for me, I'm always focusing on the customer's business value. But what I'm knowledgeable about is they may not understand how this is going to change other things like performance monitoring. What they know today might not be what they know tomorrow. So I spend a lot of time preparing customers for change, right? Change in security, change in compliance, and change in performance monitoring. So introducing them to Amazon's capabilities inherently and enhancement to those capabilities through partners like Gigamon is wildly important. It's again about customers kind of getting out of their comfort zone and what they maybe have always done. Now, there's also plenty of customers right now that are pretty familiar with cloud, and they're looking for ways to move out of maybe more native EC2-based solutions and move into more managed solutions. And that introduces another change in performance monitoring, right? And seeing it all kind of in one view and filtering out the noise and focusing on what's large and important. And this can go down even to application level monitoring, which I know we mentioned New Relic a minute ago. Application level monitoring, vastly important. So from my perspective, my job is to help customers not just focus on one aspect of their migration, but forecast for them where there is going to be additional change, but in a way that shows them that at the end of that change, in this case for this specific topic, how you're going to be monitoring performance of your systems, your application, your cloud, and ultimately of your business, that it's new, but it's good and it's fine. And it's probably better. So Srinivas, I'm sorry I geeked out on the TCP dump and the ping. I know it's quite of a throwback. I'm dating myself, but how are we doing performance monitoring? Like, what are the cool trends in performance monitoring post migration right now?
Yeah, some of the coolest trends that are becoming increasingly prevalent is take this monitoring all the way to the AI ops side of the equation. So let me kind of lay out the whole landscape, and you got me excited here, David. So basically, what's happening in the past, we used to have this standalone dashboards that talks about the CPU metrics, the memory metrics, and from Gigamon's perspective as well, we derive this network-based intelligence from packets and share the metadata with the tooling vendors. So they were all these disparate standalone pieces of the puzzle that the customers had to actually piece them together and figure out, hey, what's going on? If my application goes down, okay, I have got this CPU metrics, and let me actually look at my memory metrics and try to figure out how I can correlate the two of them and figure out where exactly the pain point is, where exactly the point of contention is. Now, what's happening is customers are loaded with a lot of noise, and they want to improve the signal to noise ratio. They are so swarmed right now that they have no tolerance for like thousands and tens of thousands of signals that come their way, can come the way of the admins and the analysts, the SOC analysts, and other players every single day. So they want everything streamlined. They want some level of correlation already built into the feedback that they're getting from these different tools. They want some level of SLOs, service level objectives, defined for some critical metrics. And what they're asking is, once those metrics are, the SLOs are breached for those critical metrics, send them a PagerDuty or a Slack message or an email that will prompt them to intervene and figure out within a matter of few minutes where exactly the issue is. In fact, they also want to evolve this point to automate that whole thing, use AI ops to further refine the signal to noise ratio there, and also lean on some of these tools to actually remediate some of the issues that have come up right away, be it on the security side or on the network performance side of the equation. Now, time is money. We've seen instances from specific customers where they had packet drops, and they wouldn't know exactly where the packet drops are happening. Now, within cloud, we got the cloud native tools, AWS-based native tools that can help customers understand where exactly the choke points are, hop-to-hop latencies, and all those things. But once you leave the cloud premise, let's say if a customer is running, just for the sake of example, a manufacturing customer, right, who may be running an ERP application or a CRM application, uh, and that is running in cloud, and that may interact with some of the latency sensitive applications on-prem, like a SCADA based application or a PLC based application that's running on the machine shop floor. Now you got this maze of traffic that's going across all three environments, and if an application shuts down, and if it so happens that it shuts down because of some issue that happened in the hybrid environment or on-prem environment, um, the APM vendors will give the CPU and memory metrics, and customer looks at them and say, okay, my CPU spiked and my memory is spiked, and that's where they stop. And typically, most of the fingers get pointed towards the networking guy, and you know this, David, from your previous.
DNS. It's
yeah,
DNS.
exactly. and the networking guys don't have enough tools to defend themselves. And what they typically end up doing is spending like hours and days of work, and the mean time to innocence and the mean time to resolution goes bonkers there, right? And they're spending losing millions of dollars every time an application goes down. So what we are able to do with our observability and SIM vendors is have in a single pane of glass, have the CPU metrics, memory metrics, and the network related telemetry metrics, correlate all three of them, and create some SLOs. And for instance, if there is a round trip time delay that is associated with a particular IP address that's on the hybrid side of the equation, we'd be able to pinpoint the exact issue related to that particular IP address that's causing the CPU spike and the corresponding memory spike and the corresponding network telemetry spike as well. So everything in one single pane of glass. And lo and behold, all the multiple hours and days of troubleshooting that you spent trying to figure out where exactly the packet drop happened, with this, everything coming in one single pane of glass with our observability vendors, we are able to cut down the troubleshooting time, right? So that's where the real value add is in some of the features that we have brought to market. The good part about that particular feature that I spoke about, which is called application metadata intel, which is where we actually take these raw packets and use deep packet inspection to crack the packet open and share only the metadata with our tooling vendors, Dynatrace or New Relic or Sumo Logic. We don't have our own dashboards, so there's no need to deploy a new tool. We actually leverage the existing observability and SIM vendor toolboards that the customers are already using, and add the network pane of glass to the existing CPU and memory panes of glass there. And in that single pane of glass, we actually give the whole picture that does the correlation and helps troubleshoot the issues within a matter of few minutes, right? So to your point, David, if it's, let's say, network retransmission resets, or check some errors, or if there is any DNS server issues, or if there is any port spoofing that's happening there, we would be able to immediately identify where it's happening, identify the IP address, isolate that along with our observability and SIM vendors, and help them take the remediation action. And this is now going more and more towards the AI ops to not only incorporate algorithms, but also automate the whole thing and take action without having to do a human intervention there.
Great. You guys touched on a lot of things. I think you answered and opened some people's minds around performance monitoring, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions there. Cost optimization. Everybody wants the biggest bang for the buck. I know AWS has some plans. They've got some strategies. I know Presidio has. But David, if you want to kick this one off, and then again, we'll go down this path, and I'm sure this is going to generate a lot of questions towards the end of this session. Bang for the buck is everybody's big issue there.
So cost optimization, also a topic that I really geek out on. I'm what Amazon calls a boomerang. So I left AWS in 2017, and I went to go work in cloud cost optimization. And I came back in 2019. So I was really interested in cloud cost optimization. As a matter of fact, prior to starting with Amazon, I was with a startup in Austin, Texas, where I had to find a way to measure the cost of each one of my customers that I hosted and a separate VPC inside of AWS. Some of my customers, based on Srinivas, the network traffic, cost me more in a given month than others did. And so I got kind of started on the cost monitoring, cloud cost management, what's commonly called as FinOps right now. So again, just a topic I geek out on. Again, I get to talk to customers about their business case for migration all the time. So I'd argue 70% of my time I'm talking about money, right? Business value translated into dollars. And I'm building that business case. And we typically believe that customers can easily save money when you do a total cost of ownership comparison between premises and AWS, even at a base level of just lift and shift migration in the order of kind of like 20%, something like that. Don't hold me to it, but generally. And that's predicated on cost controls that the customer puts in place and that we model out. Back in my day, there were, reservations, light, medium, and heavy reservations, if anyone remembers those days. Now we've got savings plans, we got reservations, we've got different storage engines, we've got automated systems that do cloud cost management for us. All business cases for migration are predicated on a solid plan for cost optimization and a solid internal customer team for monitoring spend and making business decisions on where cost optimization makes sense for customers. I always like to focus on kind of the two biggest things, which is just turn stuff off, right? Easiest way to save money in cloud, turn stuff off that you don't need, and find the right rate to pay for what you need. We've got all kinds of options from, no upfront reserved instances and savings plans, all the way to leveraging the spot market. And as we'll get into here in a minute in scaling and future-proofing, leveraging the spot market, while wildly cost favorable, sometimes means you need to modernize your application. Sometimes means you need to change your application, right, to grow in your industry and how you're deploying these things. So I love talking to customers about cost optimization, making sure that they're set up to do it properly. I'm sure there are ways to suss out additional places customers can do cost optimization from that network layer, Srinivas. So I'd love to hear from you, when customers come to you, maybe network intensive customers, maybe not, but like where you're also helping them spot opportunities for cost optimization.
Absolutely. In fact, that's a very good point, David. In terms of network traffic, sometimes customers, you don't have to necessarily send all the traffic that comes your way. Like for instance, you got YouTube traffic, and we all know we've been culprits in the past where we actually watch Netflix series, probably like Breaking Bad at work at times. So when things like this are happening, we know these are traffic that doesn't need to be analyzed because they're consuming bandwidth. You send them to the tools. That's actually another additional add-on bandwidth constraints that you're actually trying to relax. So what we do at Gigamon is using application filtering, we are able to remove some of those applications that don't need to be monitored, like YouTube or some of this other known application traffic, right? That's one way we actually optimize the traffic and reduce the cost for the customers. Another way we do that is we don't necessarily send all the raw packets. We actually send, as I previously mentioned, only the metadata side of the equation. So that actually cuts down the network traffic by almost 90 odd percentage, right? And why is this critical? And again, this is from tool consolidation point of view or tool rationalization point of view. If you have, let's take the case of on-prem customers, they have multiple data centers. Customers might be thinking about evacuating their data centers and moving all their tooling ecosystem to one particular data center. In that case, they are concerned about WAN costs if they have to send traffic from one data center to the tooling ecosystem that exists in the other data center. What we do is we typically use these kind of mechanisms to reduce the traffic and unclog those WAN pipes. And we use same techniques in cloud as well. If customer, and obviously the network related telemetry does add additional volume to customers in terms of the traffic, in addition to the logs and traces that they may be already using. Now, but we also have a way to drive efficiency in terms of how they share this network telemetry, right? Again, raw packets, they don't need to go. We can actually use application metadata, Intel application filtering, dedupe, to reduce the cost by almost 99 or 98% and send only a select piece of traffic that will help them accomplish all the stuff that we discussed previously, from troubleshooting point of view, network monitoring point of view, security use cases point of view, right? So those are some of the techniques that we use to optimize the traffic, reduce the traffic. In fact, we work very closely with AWS when they launched their gateway load balancer as an endpoint. We are the launch partner for AWS there. And we do see customers deploying quite a few accounts across multiple VPCs. And what we actively go and propose to customers is like, hey, if you use gateway load balancer as an endpoint, you would be able to drive architectural efficiency where you aggregate all this traffic into a single VPC and be able to aggregate them and send it over beyond that particular VPC into the tooling vendors. You don't have to have traffic going from each of those VPCs, each of those accounts to individual streams, through individual streams to those tooling vendors, right? We can just aggregate all of them into one VPC using gateway load balancer as an endpoint. And these are some of the techniques that we actually discuss with our customers on an ongoing basis and drive efficiency in designs. And we also incorporate, wherever possible, techniques like dedupe, application metadata, Intel, to reduce the traffic that goes through transit gateways, and help the customers migrate their workloads faster, because obviously cost is a key consideration. When they see, hey, the cost is going to be so steep, I don't want to migrate the network related piece to cloud. And this is where we actually engage with them, understand their architectural topologies, and make suggestions, improve their design efficiencies, and use the different tools that we have in the toolkit to reduce those costs, and make it easy for the customers to do this data center to application migration. One of the other things that I would be remiss if I don't mention is, on the business front, we have qualified ourselves for CPPO, which is Consulting Private Pricing Offer, which is where Mark has a lot of opinions to offer. But I may just drop in this word that a customer that's actually transacting our Gigamon SKUs through AWS Marketplace would actually retire their Gigamon spend towards their EDP quota, the retirement quota, EDP quota. Similarly, partners such as Presidio will also get to retire their quota for the Gigamon spend, right? And that's kind of what we've done with CPPO channels. We are a channels first company, and we want to make sure that we keep channels right, front, right, and center. And that's something that we work very closely with Presidio and Mark, particularly in terms of driving some of these customers to AWS for their application migration needs, and making them go through this particular CPPO process and reap the benefits on both fronts, both for customers as well as partners. Mark, do you want to talk, say a few words about the CPPO program and how Presidio benefits?
To your point, Srinivas, CPPO, the bang for the buck for the customer is nothing changes from the interface between Gigamon, AWS, Presidio, and the customer. Account teams remain the same. The biggest bang for the buck is burn down. To your point earlier, the value of the purchase through Marketplace uses to offset the customer's commitment to AWS. So if you have $1 million EDP and you buy $250,000 worth of product, that gets used to offset that $1 million. It's also a single source of truth for that particular deal. Every piece of documentation that the customer might want, whether it's a PO, whether it's a quote, whether it's financing, is attached to that offer and is viewable in their AWS console in perpetuity. So if Srinivas does a big deal, wins the lottery and leaves, David comes in. David knows right where to go to look for everything that's associated with that offer. It's a great opportunity for the customer, and AWS, Gigamon, and Presidio, all with a three-pronged approach to help the customer exceed expectations. And again, rolling into the future-proofing conversation right here. It's another way to help them do that as far as growth and scalability is concerned. So, David, I'll give you the mic now, and you can talk, at least kick off the conversation around scaling and future-proofing.
Well, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna link it back to the previous topic, right? Modernization, in my mind, is the kind of future proofing of cost optimization. There's only so much we can do by turning things off. There's only so much we can do by optimizing using, RIs and savings plans, things like that. When you really want to start optimizing from the perspective of your business, how much does it cost to operate your business? Customers really need to start thinking about modernization. And again, as I mentioned earlier, looking at those applications in their world that can be and should be modernized to provide that cost optimization, to provide that enhanced scale and that ability to innovate faster on, right? A lot of legacy applications. I was just talking to a customer where they're just, almost scared to touch their customer deployments. They've allowed customer configuration or customizations. They've done their own customizations, and they've got these, collections of monolithic applications that they're scared to touch. And when they're scared to touch it, they are kind of locked into this model of very, very slow paces of innovation. Very careful, because you make one change and you're trying to figure out how it impacts all of these customers you have in your existing customer base. So when I think about scaling and future proofing, I think about modernization. I think about what do the customers 5 years from now, what your customers, my customers, how are they going to use your products? How are you building or buying or moving your way out of the kind of legacy architecture models into that? What are you going to look like 5 years from now? First step, always, and I know I'm the migration guy, so you expect me to say this, is get into AWS. The first step, get out of the premises data centers, get into AWS. More specifically, if I could make a suggestion on moving quickly, and this is under the world of future proofing, move your data. Move your data first. Start moving your data now. Find ways to not only move your kind of at-rest data that you have lying around, but real-time data, replicating it into AWS.
Very nicely done, gentlemen. I think it's question and answer time. I have a couple that have popped up, and I'm sure more will come up. But I guess for Srinivas, maybe one question is, can you give a couple of examples of how Gigamon expedites some troubleshooting processes for the customer when things start to get a little dicey, I guess?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were talking about in terms of how the customers were held back in the past, where they only had CPU and memory metrics, and where the problem actually lies on the networking side. There's like a whole load of finger pointing that happens at the networking folks. What we were able to do by working with our observability vendors is put all of this in a single pane of glass: the CPU metrics, memory metrics, and the network telemetry metrics, correlate all of them, create service level objectives for, let's say, a round trip time or port spoofing. Let's say when a round trip time exceeds by a particular amount, 98% of the time, then you probably might need to raise an alarm, and that sends a signal to our customer admin. And then the customer admin takes a look at where exactly this issue is happening, and we will be able to, within a single pane of glass, identify a specific IP address that's causing these issues, right? And this could happen anywhere within the cloud environment, or it could happen in the hybrid cloud environment or on-prem environment. So having that visibility end-to-end to that whole workflow is very critical. And that's kind of what we use these are the kind of techniques that we use to help expedite the troubleshooting process for our customers.
All right, another one. Thank you. Another one.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and this could be a binary event also. Like a port spoofing kind of event is a security event where customers might be sending traffic through. Oops, sorry. Am I coming? Okay. Sorry, I cut that piece off and then I'll start again. This could be a port spoofing kind of event as well, where customers might be sending traffic over port 443, and they might be thinking it's HTTPS, but it could be SSH traffic that they may be sending over, right? So that's another security event that we would be able to say, hey, there's a port spoofing activity that's happening. It's a binary yes or no. If it's a port spoofing activity that's happening, and SLO goes out, it's breached right away, customer needs to intervene, right? So those are kind of the things that will help customers address some of these issues right away and keep the application up and running all the time. And that's what we are doing to expedite the troubleshooting process there, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you. Another one, they want to talk about what is Gigamon and AWS doing on the product front collectively to help customers as they go through their cloud journey?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. We've Gigamon and AWS, we worked very closely for multiple years. We've actually qualified our Cloud Suite product. We took it through the well-architected review and FTR. These are some of the things that AWS recommends as well. That's just from a program qualification point of view. But from new services that AWS launches, like Gateway Load Balancer as an endpoint, or some of the new EC2 instances that they launch, or Amazon Security Lake that they launch, we are launch partners for all these services. So we bring in a unique perspective, having understood what the customers are looking for, and incorporate those use cases and work very closely with AWS in making sure that those use cases are incorporated as a part of this new services that AWS is launching, right? Again, this is if a customer has a new requirement, we actually incorporate that particular requirement and in the form of a use case and relay it back to AWS. And AWS considers that as a feature request if it doesn't already have one incorporated. If it has one, it's fine. We just go with the flow there. But yeah, this is kind of the tight collaboration that we have with AWS, and we exist to actually delight our customers, and we take that feedback and help AWS further refine some of the features that they are bringing to the market. And we've done that with Outpost. Outpost is another thing that I want to mention. It's very near and dear because I did work on Outpost when I was at AWS. We do have our Gigamon Cloud Suite qualified on Outpost. So if the customer is, let's say, using AWS services on-prem, or if they're bringing AWS services closer to the customer that wants to run those workloads on-prem, again, Gigamon is there running on Outpost as well. So we do all this tight collaborative activities with AWS and help customers figure out the right kind of services to use wherever the workloads exist there.
Perfect. I think that's it for now. I appreciate you guys joining and walking us through the details of this, and I appreciate everyone that's joined the webinar and the interest. If there's any questions, obviously reach out to the respective account teams. Again, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark, David, and Srinivas. Great discussion. And before we wrap up, we have one more thing to cover, and that is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. So the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Don Moore from Kentucky. Congratulations to Don Moore. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Gigamon, Presidio, and AWS for making this event possible. And thanks, as always, to everybody for attending and for your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of the day and a great weekend.